Study session meeting of the Minnetonka City Council, and we'll start with introductions. Miranda?
Miranda Dalman, Assistant City Manager.
Eric Nilsson, City Attorney.
Darren Nelson, Finance Director.
Mike Funk, City Manager.
Kimberly Welburn, at large.
Rebecca Shack, Mayor.
Kizzy Coakley, Ward 4.
Paula Romeo, Ward 3.
Sarissa Saraki, Senior Management Coordinator.
Peter Leatherman, North Sutherland Company.
Kelly O'Day, Recreation Director.
Kevin Fox, Fire Chief.
Scott Bourbon, Police Chief.
Will Manchester, Public Works Director.
Julie Wishnock, Community Development Director.
Kristen Pimentel, Manager of the Marsh.
Sarah Westy, Assistant Recreation Director.
Jason Tate, Deputy Chief, Police Department.
Derek Metzger, Deputy Chief, Fire Department.
Andrew Wittenberg, Communications Manager.
Joel Mary, Assistant Finance Director.
Kevin Ringhofer, Ward 2 resident.
Tom Stockert, resident.
Great. Okay, thank you, everybody. We do have we have Deb Calvert on the phone. She'll be just listening in. She cannot participate remotely in this way. And we have two other council members absent who had urgent things come up. So it seems like we're light on council members, but everybody's committed to listening to the meeting one way or another. So they send their regards. So we will get right to it. Mike, do you have anything, or should I go right to Sarissa? All right, Sarissa.
Thanks, Rebecca. So we have Peter here to give the 2026 community survey results. Just a quick reminder on the process. So back in January, staff or the directors visited the questions and thought of themes and made any adjustments to the 2025 survey. And then the survey was brought to City Council in February, and you all gave your input and the themes and questions you wanted to be included. And then after that meeting, directors came back together and it made those adjustments, and then Peter and his team also created the questions based on your input, and they conducted the survey in March, I believe. And that was just a quick recap, and you will officially accept the results at the next council meeting. So I will just pass it to Peter, but before I do that, Mike, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you, Sarissa. The only thing I would add, Mayor and Council, is I just want to shout out and appreciation to Sarissa, who helped really champion this effort. There's just a lot of time behind the scenes that goes into working with Peter and his team in terms of getting all the questions formatted and getting all the questions in order that we've all talked about. So I guess vetted really across our organization, starting with Mayor and Council, then certainly staff participates and do it. The directors are here for two reasons, not only the budget conversation, but also the survey results, because the survey results do get utilized by staff. And so all of our team members look at those survey results. They're also part of our merit pay program, and so they get utilized more than just the results. So I just want to make sure I press that upon that everyone, that the survey is a big effort, and those results and the information behind it is used in a way that enhances all of our service efforts. So with that, I'll just turn it back over to, I think, Peter, who will kick us off tonight.
Oh, sorry, one more thing. And quickly, as Peter's talking about the questions, might kind of touch on this, but these are the questions that were in the report. So simply, if you have any questions about the survey and then if there are any results that the council wishes to further discuss or consider for a future study session. And then finally, are there any budget impacts that should be considered? All right, there you go, Peter.
Peter, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here with you to go over this year's survey. Just to review, this is pretty much the same thing that we've done for almost 30 years. I believe going back into the mid-90s. It's a 400 sample across the community. Interviews were conducted between March 23rd and April 8th. Average interview time was 26 minutes. We had 10% on the phone with us for an hour or longer. Those are your historians, and they don't do simple one-word answers, especially on open-endeds. Non-response rate was 6%, projectable to plus or minus 5% in 95 out of 100 cases. Starting to put up some demographics then. Cell phone-only households were 62%, still 1 in 10 landline-only households, and then both landline and cell phones were 28%. If we look at the demographics, the demographics are serve two purposes. First, we can look at updated census information to make sure that the survey represents the community as a whole, but then we can look at differences. How do homeowners feel versus renters? How do households with seniors feel versus households with children? So first off, how long has the resident lived in the city? 27% have been in the city for 5 years or less, while 27% have been in the community for over 20 years. So the typical resident's been here for about 9.5 years. 28% have a senior in their household, 31% have a child under the age of 18 in their household. Just over 1 in 4 are renters. And we have the typical resident, the largest chunk of self-assessed home value falls into the $400,000 to $600,000 home, with 25% at over $600,000 home. 18% are 18 to 34-year-olds, while you do have 26% that are over the age of 44. It's definitely, over the age of 65, with 42% over the age of 55. So it is an aging community, and you do have, though, you see at the previous slide, you do, though, have a lot of new folks coming into the community over the past decade also. The ethnicity, 73% white, 11% African American, 7% Asian Pacific Islander, 6% Hispanic, and 3% indicated they were multiracial. Women outnumbered men by 5% in the sample, and then you can see the geographic distribution by ward. That's based on registered voter counts to establish the percentage within those, each of the 4 wards. So, once again, this is a consolidated, we're not going to go through all 150 or 60 questions, kind of the highlights, the traditional ones that we share with the group, but then also with some of the new questions, especially with the local option sales tax that you're exploring. So what do folks like most about the community? It's always been the small town aspects here. It's the lake, it's the friendly people, it's the housing and neighborhood, it's the safety, it's the schools, quiet and peaceful, trees and nature, open spaces, parks. Then we get to the suburban response. Only 6% are saying, hey, it's just a convenient place to live. Your folks definitely value the more traditional things that people value outside of the 7-county metro. Typically, you live in the 7-county metro, it's much more for convenience than anything else. Now, if we ask what they like most, we always follow up with what's the most serious issue facing the community. And this is, I did a statewide in February, and so just to establish some new norms, especially post November 15th last year when everybody got their property tax statements. And property taxes is going to be, outside of the issue of fraud at the state level, taxes is going to be the major issue of this election. 21% indicate it's high property taxes. Traffic congestion is up, no doubt, with what's happening on 394 right now. Really kind of the epicenter of the pinch point there. That's more than double. Lack of diversity. We looked at the lack of sidewalks. That actually came down from last year. We had that blip last year, so we were going to monitor. You know, you need 3 data points to have a trend. So it did come back down, but still 1 in 10 folks are looking at the lack of sidewalks. But then if we go down to the bottom, your booster core, 1 and 4, there are no problems in the city of Minnetonka. It is perfect here. And that is triple of what we're seeing right now in 2026. We're down to about 8% generously in the 7-county metro. Before the pandemic, we would have 12 to 15% typically, but the pandemic has made people find things that they're unhappy about more so than ever before. Now, the overall quality of life. Last year, it was 98%. This year, it's 96%. This has been consistent, and this is extraordinarily high. In 2026, right now, the quality of life rating in Minnesota in their community is at 78%. What has happened is there's been a shift from good to only fair. And traditionally, I always said, you don't live in a community that you think is only fair or poor for very long. You're going to look for a new community because you want a positive, have a favorable quality of life. So with the norm at 78%, but then also your excellent rating, it went up statistically significantly. It's at 44%. That is the high in the last 5 years post-pandemic. The excellent for the quality of life rating right now is at 11% across the state of Minnesota. How welcoming is the city? Extraordinarily so. 95% say either very or somewhat, with a flat majority, 55% indicating very welcome. We started testing a few years ago some statements about the welcoming and inclusive nature of the community. And we asked folks to rate excellent, good, only fair, or poor. I've collapsed because you had so many people indicating an unfavorable response. So I thought it was just interesting to look at the intensity of the position. In 2023, people were very much more intense. They were everything was excellent. The excellent dropped, but it just went into the good. There's not been a conversion to an unfavorable position. So welcoming the community for all, 83%. Treating all residents with respect, 89%. Treating all residents fairly, 89%. And providing services to residents of all backgrounds is at 83%. City services, across the board, remain extraordinarily positive. You've always kind of set the benchmark on this. There is one service that went up in the unfavorable. And I always hesitate. This is just one data point. And it's the one data point that's the most fluid, especially when you do surveys over the course of the winter. And that's street repair and maintenance. The 32% unfavorable. The norm for street repair and maintenance, when we look at the data from November until April, is at 45% unfavorable. So it still compares favorably. It's something to watch. I remember years ago when John Gagnon was city manager, and the unfavorable rating went up on the pavement repair, but it went up a couple years. And then the whole discussion, first time I'd ever heard of mill and overlay, was meeting in the council chambers in order to start to look at how to fix the concerns that residents had. I think that this is just, you put an asterisk by this and look and see where you're at next year, because this one is very fluid. All the others, extraordinarily high ratings.
Quick question.
Yep.
I was asking Mike about this morning, and when it says the services, like, did they parse out, your questioners, whether it was the fact that the repairs weren't enough, or that people were too inconvenienced by street repairs?
We follow up and ask, so, what changes or improvements would you make? Fix potholes faster.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep. The value question has changed a lot in Minnesota. It has not changed here. Because when you think of value, there are two inputs that go into a value proposition. What are you getting, the services, the quality of those services, and what you're paying. Well, what we know across Minnesota now is there's a very big concern on property taxes. So when you look at the value of city services right now, yours was at 88%, it's at 81%. This has dropped down to the high 60s as a norm right now. Because not only you are buoyed by the fact that you have extraordinarily high ratings on city services. You know, people can rate something positively on the value, even if they think they're paying a bit too much, if the quality brings it up, and that's what you have here in Minnetonka. Before the recession of 2008, 2009, this question, people, they didn't understand inflation. 20 years later, it's baked into everybody's equation on it costs more to provide the same thing year to year. And so do residents at a time where they're concerned about taxes, are they willing to see a tax increase to maintain city services? Absolutely. And this is typically somewhere between 70 and 80% across the state. What we don't have, we don't ask in your survey that we ask elsewhere is, would you support a tax increase to expand or enhance city services? That right now is at about 30% agreeing for that. So they're willing to invest and to maintain what they have, and that is absolutely the case here with 4 out of 5. How would they prioritize a 1% property tax levy increase? You could see the streets went up a little bit. That matches the concern that they have. Police and fire, parks and trails, 11% point to another service. 9% said no, no more at all, and 2% are unsure. So this time around, it tips more towards street maintenance than the other city services. Now, the new section. We tested 5 projects, and we asked folks if they would support or oppose a half-cent sales tax for each of these projects. The first project that we tested is for fire station number 2. And we told folks it would allow the increase would be used to rebuild fire station number 2 located off of Hopkins Cross Road near Ridgedale. That has 83% support. Project number 2 was the fire station number 3 located in the Opus area in southeast Minnetonka. That has 83% support. Connecting trails to business districts, schools and neighborhoods and other regional trails, 81%. Upgrades to the marsh, including exterior, interior building systems, mechanical improvements to the pools and sauna areas, and renovate program spaces, 79% support. And then the final one would be used to add a park and open space areas next to the light rail station in the Opus area, 76% support. This is pretty consistent. We've done a lot of surveys across the metro area on local option sales taxes. Folks really like this idea. It's because it's seen as a solution to get things done in the community that doesn't require a property tax increase. Now we couple that with, we told folks about the U of M study, which projects that 52% of new sales tax revenue would come from people who live outside of Minnetonka and use city services. Does this make you much more likely, somewhat more likely, less likely, or no difference? It has an impact to 67%, but it's almost a 1-for-1. Basically, the argument operates in the echo chamber of support. It just makes you a stronger supporter. It doesn't change anybody's mind. So I think all 5, there's not, you know, I've done this before, like Bloomington. There was one item that was much more difficult back, was that 3-4 years ago. Across the board, they're all within the plus or minus 5% support level. There's not one that doesn't make sense to residents. Would folks support additional regulations on short-term rentals? This one, at this point, you do have a majority, 55%. 35% say no, and 10% want more facts. You know, what will be the additional regulations on short-term rentals? So right now, you have a working majority for a discussion on the short-term rentals in the community. E-bikes. 15% of their households said they owned an e-bike. 22% said they have concerns about the use of e-bikes in the community. How concerned are they about this issue? 35% are very concerned, 62% are somewhat concerned. So the very concerned contingent, it's 35% of 22%. About 7% of the community indicate that this is a major concern, but 75% of the community have no concerns at all. As always, when we look at the environmental and sustainability actions, they're all important for the city to undertake. All of them have a majority. There's a clear hierarchy, though, if we look at it, go from top to bottom. Water conservation, 84%. Energy conservation, 81%. Reducing waste, 75%. Improving stormwater management, 67%. Climate change, 63%, and expanding mass transit options, 60%. So really, the community saying by at least 60%, going all the way up to almost 85%, that these are all important for the city to undertake. It's not realistic to be able to undertake all 6, but this does give you a clear sense. And this has been pretty consistent with the top 4 kind of shuffling over the years, and the bottom 2 shuffling for 5th and 6th. You've always, though, had a majority in all 6 indicate that they're important for the city to take action on. How about programs for teenagers? 62% indicate you have about the right amount. 22% say too few. 3% say too many, and 13% are unsure. The 22% that say too few is consistent. We asked this question for the first time last year, and that is the majority of households with children. So they would have the highest level of awareness of whether there are programs. Keep in mind that you have 70% of folks that don't have children at all. Input into zoning and development decisions. You can see the one blip was back in 2024. I can't remember what the issue was, but the yes dropped down to 73%. It's now bounced back. 2025, we saw it go to 88 and 86%. So whatever that issue was in 2023, it is dissipated as a concern. With the vast majority, almost 90% over the course of the last 2 surveys saying, and this is important because this is about input into zoning and development decisions. And oftentimes Minnesotans confuse the ability to provide input with the ability to get your way. Have a say versus have your way. And I guarantee you 86% of people who have given input did not have it go their way, but at least they had the ability to be involved in the decision. Job of city staff, 35% indicate that they have had quite a lot or some firsthand contact with the city staff. How do they rate the city staff? Last time it was 90%, this time it's 89%. Just extraordinarily high, just right at the top, and it's just been consistent throughout the years on city staff. When we break it down a little bit further, 31% indicate that they've had contact with City Hall during the past year. Of that 31%, they were asked 4 performance measures, rating the city on ease of reaching help, 90%, courtesy, 92%, 90% on efficiency, and 97% on professionalism. The norm on this, we always look at, is we want 80% in public sector customer service satisfaction. You're at 90% or higher on all of them. And then finally, how are folks getting their information? The Minnetonka Memo, as I've stated before, has its own brand. It is just, when you have 43%, and we differentiate, because we have the city newsletter down at the bottom. If they say the Minnetonka Memo, it's noted as the Minnetonka Memo. If they just say the newsletter, that's down at the bottom. So a flat majority, 51%, indicates that's the primary source of information. The city website did drop 6 points At the same time, social media went up 50% from 8 to 12. This is something I'm going to dive in more in the statewide that we do in the summer, because I'm starting to see a growth, whether it's school district or city. For some reason, more people are willing to admit that their primary source of information is social media in the past 12 months than ever before. It's one of those things. You don't tell somebody you don't vote, you don't tell somebody you don't recycle, and you don't tell a stranger that you rely on social media as a primary source of information. We have more people. There's one city to your north that social media is the second highest. People are saying it's their principal source of information. So there is this shift where I'm seeing websites go down and social media increasing nowadays. Local newspaper at 10%. The good news is the grapevine, and social media is the grapevine, just a different form of it, but your word of mouth is still in single digits. And that is due completely to the fact that you have extraordinarily strong city newsletter. Because as communities, if you look at the Southwest Metro area, as those newspapers have disappeared, what's taken over is the grapevine. Especially for older folks who would traditionally read the newspaper, they're not going to go on social media. They're not going to go to the website. And if you don't have strong print going to those houses, the grapevine takes over in the community, where there are some communities with the #1 source of information in the metro area being the grapevine currently. So I think across the board, another extraordinarily positive. This is always a bright light in Minnesota, even during difficult times. You are particularly insulated from a lot of the concerns in Minnesota. That's not to say that they're not there. You saw the property, the taxes as a concern. It hasn't impacted how they feel about the city and the services and the relationship they have with the city, because you bridge that connection by providing high quality services to residents. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Peter. I mean, as usual, a great source of pride for me. I think all of us here and staff. And the work you do is just so valuable to informing how we make decisions here. So council, questions for Peter? Anybody?
I guess I had one question. I had talked to Mike about this earlier today. I was asking about the council. Do the council ever get the random questions? And I know he said everyone's included, and I've never been asked any of these survey questions. I know one counselor has recently, and I was like, maybe because she's so recent, she got picked through the random selection. So I was just curious about that.
I tell the database to spit out 400 numbers. Yeah. I actually called the superintendent's secretary. I just got an email coming here that said, boy, you did a great job. She's interested in a job. I didn't do it. I can't do it. My phoners do. But it is just, it's all random. And I said, I'll have council members, school board members. They'll say, what do we do if we're contacted? I said, you have to do what you want to do. In my opinion, you were randomly selected and you're a member of the community. Okay. Please take it. I've had a superintendent in the past say, I'm just not going to take it. It's so you're a voter and you can impact, but it's pretty. So, but yeah, it's just the complete luck of the draw.
Well, the one thing, I noticed an improvement specifically on the police department, and I thought it was maybe a statistically significant, 6 points.
Yep.
Favorability. And did you see, I guess that some of that has to do with our tempered response on Operation Metro Surge. I mean, did you see that coming out of the winter and the surveys that you did over the winter as a factor in any of the responses?
People compartmentalized, for the most part, what they thought of the city, their city, versus what happened with the state and the feds over the course of the winter. I do think, though, the police department here has always been extraordinarily well regarded. Each city's individual police department, I always say with police departments, it's kind of like politicians. I don't like politicians, but I like my politician. And so even if you do have concerns, even coming out of 2020 into 21, if you ask the general in our statewide, general perceived the perceptions on policing was very different than when you asked, how do you rate the job your police department's doing? And so, all of those things, crime, policing, it crosses borders. And it changes people's perception at a macro level, but people, unless there's an instance in the community specifically, everybody always feels really good about their public safety department.
Very good. All right, Council, well, the next discussion question is there anything that we wish to discuss further or consider in a future study session stemming from the survey?
I guess for me, I guess the what you stated about the programs for the teens, that kind of caught my attention because you said 70% of the people don't have children in Minnetonka, but 22% of the household that does are asking for, feel like we don't have enough programs. So I'm just curious, I would like, the question for a future study session, because I've always kind of questioned the programs for because I have a team, and so I'm always thinking about more programming for teens. So that really caught my attention. So that's something that I would like to consider for a future study session. Even though I know during the year when we showed Kelly O'Day had showed how many programs we had for teens, and it seems like people were okay with the programs, but in the survey result, it shows that we still need more teen programs. So I'm just kind of curious about that. What's the discrepancy with that?
I would suggest, it's one of those things. It's what you know and what you don't know. And the vast majority of people say not having children, you're going to have a lot of people saying it's about the right amount because they haven't heard about it. I would suggest for next year we change this up. And not to discount non-parents, but on this one, I think you probably, instead of asking the question generally, we'll follow up into the demographic section. If you have kids, and break it down into that level, because that'll give you a better depth. Then we could even go, perhaps what types of programs are you interested in, or, in some communities, do your children enjoy passive versus active recreation, those sorts of things, but perhaps maybe go a little bit more in depth. But I don't think the general broad question to the community as a whole provides the level of detail. I think it's time to dive down a little bit into the specifics with the user group, shall we say.
Anything else, Council? Kimberly?
Yeah, and I don't know that this needs to be a study session, but Mike and I discussed some things that I think that maybe based on survey results, there could be some more education done, like on the importance of stormwater management. And that I didn't actually mention this to him, but I did notice, like, for the questions about organic recycling, and one of the reasons people gave for not using it is that it costs too much, and so they're not aware that they're already paying for it. So that's something that we need to try again to communicate to people that, hey, you're already paying for the service. You can use it.
You're not getting anything. Yes,
right.
yes.
So
Yeah.
you're paying for something that you're not using.
Yeah.
Exactly. Instead of not using something, hoping I'm not paying. Yes. Yeah.
All right, anything else on number 2? Not seeing any. All right, number 3, are there any budget impacts that should be considered? Can you, Mike or Sarissa, explain what you're looking for with that question?
And maybe we could also tee this up into the next segment when we talk about the budget. The intent of that question was, is there anything in these survey results that would prompt some sort of budgetary conversation? So, for example, I'm going to pick on Will, like the potholes. Like, is there something in the budget that we should be focused on as a result of anything that you saw in the survey results?
Okay.
Is kind of the intent behind it.
So we'll get 2 stabs at this. So if you don't have anything top of mind now, we can kind of regroup, because I think we're going to have a similar question at the end of the budget conversation.
I just
Paula?
have one quick
Yeah.
comment maybe, or putting a marker in it for future, as Mike and I talked about this morning regarding communications in the memo for sure, which is great that we have so many people who love the memo. It's just that with postage prices going up and everything, you know, it's $25,000 or so to mail out every month for that. So at one point, you know, do we want to maybe think about, you know, trying to wean people off of the printed and or mailed and go more towards like email letter? I know we have a lot of people, newsletters, we have a lot of people who still, you know, only want to do the print, but, you know, just maybe thinking about that for the future.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, particularly considering the question where people seemed favorable on maybe cutting back on the number of editions.
Right. So maybe there could be a, you know, we talked about this, you know, for those people who want to have more information, they could get the additional, like maybe it goes to every other month or every quarter, and then there's an electronic version that is put out more frequently for people who want to keep up with volunteer opportunities or other things, or want to have a comprehensive source of information in one place instead of maybe getting the individual newsletters.
Yeah, I mean,
We
you
had
had
that discussion as well.
68% of Minnetonka Memo users willing to talk about because of those costs in order to scale back. Yeah.
Great.
And I would just add, I think I had, Mayor,
Oh,
if I
go
could,
ahead.
yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think I'd shared in my conversation with all the council today, just that very conversation on the cost of the newsletter. And I turn over to Andrew over there. Andrew and leadership has talked about the costs of that. And I don't know that we'll go into that depth here this evening, but certainly in the coming months as staff pulls together our operational expenditures, that is something we are talking about and exploring other options. Because it is expensive. And Paula just mentioned, for example, the cost of the postage. I think we're hearing that postage is going to go up to $1 per parcel or per mailer. And, we're mailing out to 23,000 households. So that's just mailing costs per month, let alone the printing and the pulling it together costs. And so it's expensive. Right now that expenditure lives within the cable fund, and just with cable, and so it's not, so right now property taxes are not paying for the newsletter. It's coming out of our cable fund, which is franchise fees, still paid for by the residents, but it's just collected a different methodology. And as people are disconnecting from cable, we know that cable revenue, that franchise fee is continuing to decrease and migrating those costs out of cable TV over to the general fund. So that's where we'll have more of a property tax impact, and then looking at those options to best serve the community. And it's like everything that we do, in my opinion, a balance between communicating, because we also hear from residents that want more information. Sometimes we hear from folks that think we're not communicating enough or not putting out enough information. So it's putting out the information and doing it in a way that's reaching people and is cost effective all at the same time.
Great. All right, anything else on this last item? We'll talk more about it. Okay, well, Peter, again, thank you so much, and we really appreciate, and I mean, I haven't heard you present to any other councils, but I will say, I always think, is he just pumping us up here? But I'm going to just understand that we are shining light in Minnesota.
We're going to take that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I go back to, most people are overall satisfied in the community they live into. They live in. It's always to what degree are you satisfied? Are you enthusiastic, or is it just a place to be? People have always been enthusiastic here, and that's definitely not the case in a lot of other communities.
So
Well, that's
like
good
the
to
Lake
know.
Wobegon. Everybody's above average.
Well, yeah, well, your former city manager long ago asked my business partners, because I think at that time, this was in the 90s, you were the second or third, and they're like, create a list on the quality of life rating with all the communities. And so we put that together and gave it to Dave Childs. And he proceeded to share it with everybody from Mama. And then we got calls from all the other city managers. So then we just named the top 5, and everybody else was A through Z on the ratings. So it's always bore out that you're at the top. It's just, that battle at the top. But no, it was, the ones at the bottom definitely knew they were at the bottom. Yes.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, so we are shooting to get everybody home by the start of the second period of the hockey game. No, we're Mike and I talked where we're going to shoot for, we said, an hour and a half on this agenda item. So let's do our best to make that happen. And so on to the next item, which is, with our Granicus problems, I put my agenda, here it is. Budget kickoff, and that is Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Council. Let's see, do I have, thank you. Get the,
Sorry.
give us 30 seconds for the transition.
Well, you're using your own time.
I know.
so.
If you have it open, that's fine.
I can keep the mic.
All right, are we ready?
We're ready.
All
Thanks,
right,
Mike.
thank you, appreciate it. All right, as I noted earlier, Council, tonight is our budget kickoff, and as you introduced, Mayor, the budget kickoff. Also recognize that we have many of our staff members here tonight, just again, not only here for the survey, but participating and hearing the conversation on our budget. Just to kick things off here for this evening, this is tonight's agenda. We do have a number of slides that both Darren and I will walk through here this evening. Oops. So Darren really wants to make it to the second quarter. So.
Darren, sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned it.
So this is kind of our outlay for tonight. So we have our overview. So I'll kick off the overview. I'll kick it over to Darren. We'll highlight the financial management plan. That document was in your packet. We'll highlight some of the budget drivers, preliminary budget drivers. Again, it is, as I remind you, it is already May. But there's a lot that will change between now and the end of the year. So we want to highlight tonight what information we do have and what we think will be driving the budget for 2027. We'll talk a little bit on facility planning. So we'll have a slide coming up just talking about all of our assets and the facilities that we've been talking about the last year and a half. Kelly, I believe, is going to talk a little bit on the recreation and do a recreation overview on our facilities. Then after that, Darren will highlight priority-based budgeting. So you're going to get a real glimpse into the work that's been happening the last 6 months by staff in regards to how we've been teeing up this conversation regarding priority-based budgeting. I think it's pretty cool. And I think as we dive deeper into it, beyond tonight, I think you're going to see just the impact of and the power behind what this will do in terms of prioritizing. We'll end it with our Q&A, and then we'll have an exercise at the end to really walk through then council priorities and then those questions at the end. So with that, these are the questions, so just keep these questions in mind. Again,
We're off the screen again.
What's
All right,
happening?
there we go.
Okay. Or you're clicking, that's why. Okay, never mind. We were both clicking, so that's why.
Is that what happening? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I won't
There we
touch
go.
anything.
So these are the discussion questions for this evening. So keep these in mind as we go through the presentation. And the first question, and I talked to all of you today when we connected, and that is what priorities that you have for 2027, not including but not limited to our operations, our capital improvement planning, our programming, anything dealing with our economic improvement planning, any initiatives that come to mind. This is really, we want to hear from you on anything about the budget. So it's not just general fund operations, so we just want to hear from council tonight. I think we're just diving deeper into that question this year, more so than I think even previous years, because it's, I think, a lot easier. It is a lot easier for staff on the front end before we start putting the ingredients together for our cake, if you will, our proverbial budget cake. So as we have just your feedback here this evening, that will be helpful before we start actually putting that cake together and even putting it in the oven. And not that we won't have other touch points along the way in the coming months, but it's a lot easier tonight just to really understand that from you. So that's question one. And then question two is just really regarding our facility improvements and what projects are your highest priority. Again, Darren will touch base on that here with a slide coming up. And really, at the end of it, we have a two-part question there for you, just in terms of what's preferred, what is that looking like for you, and then a real pointed question, if you will, is about the community center. And just working with Kelly O'Day and his team, I know you know that's been in the queue for many years, and we need to know a little bit of direction from the council on our community center and where that is in the priority list. Because for Kelly and his team, it's about scheduling. And so we already start getting calls about weddings in 2027 and other events being held at the community center. So we need to know if we need to reserve or block time off for those improvement projects. So that's the real planning effort that will need at least some direction tonight. It's not final direction, but just some sort of guidance on what that's looking like for you. So that in mind, this slide you've seen before, and that is our 2027 budget development. We are really here in that third bullet line down, the May 11th budget kickoff. You saw this slide at the last study session, so I won't go through it here, but it does outline for you all the dates coming up in terms of when we have different touch points with our budgets. I'll pause there real quickly. Any questions about the timeline? I know.
Council? No.
So again, I know you've seen it, and it's also for those that might be in attendance here this evening or at some point listening online, just knowing that's the schedule for this year and when different parts of our budget will be discussed. The next slide, and again, I know this is a repeat, so that's why I'm being pretty quick on it. Just to remind everyone, our budget. This is the 2026 budget, and I mentioned it's $124 million. So if you ever ask, what's the city's total budget? In 2026, it was $124 million. That will certainly change as we develop for 2027. On the left-hand side of this are our governmental funds, and the governmental funds are those that are supported by property taxes. Those are the four buckets, if you will. Starting on the top is the special revenue accounts. There's a number of special revenue accounts. Not all those are supported by property taxes, except for we do have money towards the Marsh, and the other one is for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and which is really through the HRA levy. And so those are a couple funds with special revenues supported by taxes. Moving around that diagram is the capital improvement funds, or the CIP. That's where we fund all of our streets, technology, equipment, parks, trails, etc. And then we have debt service. Those are principal and interest payments on our outstanding debt service. And then our general fund, where a bulk of our expenditures lie just with our general fund operations. So those are all, again, property tax supported. We have then another category of funds called our enterprise funds. Those are enterprise in the sense that they are not supported by property taxes, and fees are the main source of revenue. So those would be like our water and sewer utility type accounts. The very right-hand graphic really kind of, again, illustrates the breakdown of the property taxes that are collected. 81%, or that darkest blue area, is towards the general fund. So again, a majority of our property tax is collected, pay for our general fund operations. 16% is for capital, and then 2 and 1% are for the special revenue and the debt service. Hi, Deb. So we take a real systematic approach, and the reason I show this slide is that there are a lot of moving parts that go into our budget process. That's why it takes us almost 7 to 8 months to pull together. But it starts with our mission, vision, and values. And I won't read through those here this evening. You know what they are, but that is really the structure by which we get to our budget. So the vision is important, our mission, and then our values again, and then our strategic plan. All of that feeds into our strategic plan, which then really drives our budget. And where I'll pause here on this slide is on the values. When I think from a staff perspective, from my perspective as I work with staff in pulling the budget together, the values is really important. And those are noted there on the right side. I know it's probably, you have to squint to probably read those, but they are important in that the city's values are grounded in, we are committed to a beautiful, sustainable, and healthy environment. The next one listed there is delivering excellent public services and providing affordable opportunities. The third value is ethically upholding community trust through proactive, inclusive public engagement, transparent communications, and careful stewardship of our financial, natural, and capital assets. Then our last value is being able to nimbly lead our city into the future by anticipating community needs, pursuing service and innovations and other technologies to find efficiencies in what we do. And a lot of this is grounded also in collaboration. I mention those values because it is important in terms of we identify what our values are, they lead, and again, are foundational to then what's noted here is the priority-based budgeting. And we're going to get to that. That's been kind of the newest initiative in terms of how we're approaching our budget. When we look at priority-based budgeting, it's solely grounded again around the vision, the mission, the values, and our strategic plan. So it takes a look at all those elements. And then, again, I don't want to get too far ahead of Darren, and we'll show you what that looks like in terms of how we pull that together. With the strategic plan, again, just backing up to that previous slide with the strategic plan. With our strategic priority, financial strength, I do want to point out the 3 desired outcomes. The first one is improve alignment between service expenditures and identified priorities. That's where priority-based budgeting comes in. That's the real action step and the actionable item behind that desired outcome. The second is expanding sources of revenue for capital improvement projects. Again, that's been part of our conversation around the local option sales tax possibilities, the grant writing that we've been doing, and other revenue generating, identifying other revenue generating sources. Then last, a strategic priority with financial strength, desired outcome is the high level of creditworthiness, really maintaining our AAA bond rating, et cetera. We have a clickable link there for a community dashboard. We won't spend time on that, but if we have time, if anyone's interested, we can go back to that later. The next slide then, in setting the stage for tonight's conversation, is to again give you a sense of our last 20 years levy. As Peter noted here a few minutes ago, property taxes are on the minds of residents. That has always been the case. It's even more so today. And really just want to make sure that all of you are reminded of where we are positioned compared to our peer cities. This dates back the last 20 years and takes, again, a look at our peer cities, and Minnetonka is in the middle of all that. And you think about for me, I think about our values and our strategic plan and our priorities. And so we're not, and maybe to put this in business terms, we're not the Walmarts of the world, and we're not the Nordstroms. And so we're kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of the value of community services we provide. We're investing in those services. Investments in services do take those revenue sources. And so I think from my perspective as a city manager, as we look at where we've been the last 20 years and again how we position ourselves as a city and meeting the needs of our community, that yes, property taxes we are very aware of, and how we compare ourselves, we're right below the average of all those cities. The 20-year average is at 99%, we're at 96%. That's what that line represents. Again, so we've been positioned really kind of in the middle of our peer cities. You heard some of this from directors last month, and that is some of the challenges. So as staff, as we start again pulling together the numbers in the coming months, and as we ask you those questions at the end, just remind you of those challenges and potential opportunities. Darren will touch base on a slide here in a few minutes on the Public Safety Master Plan, so you get a sense of where we're at in terms of that timeline. We have, just looking at the future of the EMS service delivery, you've heard both from Chief Fox and Chief Borboom recently just about the challenges with EMS, the ever-changing environment around EMS services, and how we fit into and accommodate that changing landscape. The recreational facility study, again, we've been talking about that, and we'll have a slide coming up on the facilities, our fire station analysis and remodeling, so we're fitting people and buildings together, so that has to be coordinated in terms of the staff that we're bringing on as we transition to more of a full-time model, and then having the facilities to accommodate that as well. The Opus Park, again, not new to you, but certainly looking at funding for Opus Park, the implementation of the CAP, which is the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, and making sure we have the right funding available to carry out those initiatives. Our CIP has been a challenge. Again, you'll see in a slide coming up where our CIP levy has been pretty flat the last number of years, and as we know, with inflation and with other budget pressures, especially with tariffs now, just costs escalating exponentially. And so being able to keep intact our 5-year CIP, knowing that expenditures are rising, and again, with the budget pressures and the levy pressures. Then certainly with our ERP and HCM upgrades, those are our software upgrades for our HR software, as well as our financial software upgrades, something that we know is coming and has a bigger price tag to it. With that, I'm going to turn over to Darren. We're going to transition into financial management planning. So hopefully I kind of set the stage a little bit for you in terms of what's coming up. As I turn over to Darren for financial management planning, I would just say that it's such an important exercise when we look at our financial management planning. You know, we're a city that just doesn't look 1 year at a time. We want to make sure we're looking out the next 5 years. Certainly there are assumptions that go into that in terms of projecting salaries and benefits. Our capital improvement planning is an important element of that. Our economic improvement planning is an important element of that. Our debt service planning, facility planning, all of that is so important into our long-range planning. And that's important as we look at our financial health of the city to make sure that we're positioned well moving forward. So with that, I'd like to turn over to Darren, and he's going to kind of walk us through the financial management plan, the elements that go into the plan. I know I've kind of covered some of that here in my statements. We can probably go on to the next slide. I too am thinking about the second quarter, so we're, so with that, second period. Get my sports straight. All right, with that, turn over to Darren.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Yeah, so the financial management plan, we included in the packet as well. I think last year we included it for one of the first times that we kind of reviewed that in depth. There are a number of items that go into that, as Mike mentioned. We're looking forward throughout the next 5 years, looking at our revenues, our expenditures, making several assumptions on those as well. But we also utilize that to help with our capital improvement program as well too. So making sure that we have sufficient fund balances, not only within this general fund piece of it that you see that's here, we also have those same plans for every one of the capital project funds that go out as well too. And so we have long-range forecasts for not just the general fund, but for all our capital project funds as well too. And making sure that those levy projections, that we try to get those where they're manageable. We're not seeing those spikes up and down from year to year on that end of it. And that's where we've been fortunate to have some healthy reserves that we've been able to move over to different funds throughout the years. And we're able to, in this year as well too, to continue that process. And so that helps us kind of moderate the levy for not only just this upcoming year for 2027, but for all the next 5 years as well too on that end of it. The financial management plan includes a lot of the one-time costs. As Mike mentioned earlier, it is early, it's only May. So there are lots of items in here that we still need to go through and get all the details on that aren't the 30,000 foot level projects or programs at this point in time. And so one of those big ones is the public safety master plan. We've been working on that for the last 3 years or so on that end of it. That's programmed in here, trying to get that where we've got some manageable levies as well too. Some of the things that aren't in here are those, like the fire station improvements. If we were to build a couple new fire stations, those aren't in this financial management plan at this point in time. That's given that kind of holding our breath that maybe sales tax pays for that or is able to help finance that to a certain extent, and the same with kind of the recreational facility improvements as well. With one caveat, we did with last year's budget set aside about $405,000 as kind of a first year of a 2-year plan to set aside some dollars for potential bond issuance in the future, whether that's for a fire station remodel or community center / Williston remodels or something to that nature at some point in time. It kind of helped us generate a little bit of a savings account for future steps on that end of it. So for 2027 consideration, so in the public safety master plan, we have programmed right now, and these are obviously just preliminary, but we have 6 full-time firefighters with April 1 hire dates for 27. With a cost of about $800,000. And I should put a caveat. I did notice this afternoon that my numbers in the report were wrong. I think I had 1 million or 1.1 million in the report. It is actually 795,000. So I apologize for that error. And then there was one other, I think, on the capital improvement program amount is 500 million or 500,000, I should say. So we're looking at the 6 full-time firefighters for 2027. We do not are not planning to hire any in 2026. We took a little bit of a break there from our 2025 hires. One other item we have under the Public Safety Master Plan is additional operator to cover extended hours in the Real-Time Operations Center. So that would be for our Drones as First Responder program to help man that station outside more than our just normal business hours right at the moment at this point in time. So we have about $140,000 budgeted there. I'm not sure if that's a correct amount, but it is probably more than enough at this point in time, but it's a placeholder for now. And then we also have, related to the Public Safety Master Plan, is the Drones as First Responder program that the council approved, and we initiated that lease in 2025 at a cost of $300,000 annually. And so we paid for that first year, 2026, out of the capital improvement program. And then years 2 through 10 are going to be move over and transition being paid for out of the general fund, out of the police department operational budget. So that'll be a $300,000 increase to the general fund piece of that. We had sufficient funding and a kind of reserve balance that's in the capital improvement or the public safety fund, which is a capital project fund, to cover that first year on that end of it. What else is in the budget is the second year of that facility levy funding. We talked about that $405,000 a little bit ago. This is that second step of that, and so that would get us to $810,000, which would support a $10 million bond issuance for facility renovations across the city. Continuing restoration of our capital improvement program, as Mike mentioned, our CIP levy's been right around $10 million. It's actually been a little bit less than that. We decreased it a little bit last year to help reduce the levy impact last year, and so trying to restore that a little bit. So we have right now programmed for the CIP to increase $500,000, and I'll show you in a minute kind of where we're projecting that to be at this point in time. And then kind of a plan over the next number of years, and we've kind of had a plan every year, but it seems like we always at the last minute we reduce that CIP a little bit to try to moderate the levy a little bit, but at this point in time we have a restoration in there of $500,000. And then we have a couple unknowns as well too. Our health insurance, we had a fairly substantial increase last year. It was just under 10%, I believe it was, but it sounds like our insurance renewal might be pretty significant this year. We don't have any numbers yet. We just know that our experience rating hasn't been great on that end of it. So not expecting good numbers on that end of it. And then we have 4 of our 5 unions. Their contracts expire at the end of December here. So we'll be in negotiations with them for wages and healthcare costs and those types of things coming up as well. So as we look at the 27 budget as well too, and this is a slide you've seen before as well, but there are a number of different documents and plans and programs that go into the budget. This is kind of where that strategic plan, along with all these types of programs, build that budget and build those priorities across the organization. So we have, as we mentioned, the CAP plan, the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, to the strategic plan, to the Public Safety Master Plan, and so on and so forth on that end of it. So as we take a look at the financial management plan, and I know this is small, just want to highlight, maybe I can, Amanda or Miranda, can I grab the mouse from you? Excuse me, yours. Just want to point out a couple areas, maybe. Maybe not.
Showed up for a second.
Did anybody see it?
I saw it for a second, but
Oh, there it
I
is.
didn't see again.
It's moving too quick. Okay. So if we look at 2025 actual, we're still working on the, we had our auditors in a couple weeks ago. We're working on our financial report that's getting pretty close. These 2025 actuals are pretty much going to be final at this point in time. But as you can see, at the end of 25, we had a really good 2025 year. We had $4.1 million of revenues over expenditures. Then we had programmed out, just below there in the orange, you can see we programmed out $900,000 and an additional $178,000 as transfers out. So we netted about just over $3 million of excess revenues over expenditures, which is great. That allows us to use those excess reserves for future levy reductions in our capital project funds on that end of it. However, I will note that, I wish I could see this mouse easier. My eyesight is terrible, but you can see the expenditure line where it says $55 million, and you look at 2026 column where it says $60 million. So that's an increase of $5 million, and our fund balance policy requires us to be in that 30 to 50% range. And so say we're at 40%, we want to keep our fund balance at 40%. If our expenditures go up by $5 million, that means we need to increase our reserves by $2 million just to maintain that 40% base on that end of it. So in reality, if we have $3 million surplus, really means that we have $1 million surplus that we're able to reallocate to other capital project funds at this point in time. So, and obviously we don't expect our expenditures to increase at that rate moving forward, so it won't need as much excess fund balance in the future, but there is a need on every year as your expenditures increase to hopefully have a little bit of a surplus there to cover that fund balance requirement piece.
But we don't at this point, right? Is that, I mean, the projections see it going under 40%, is that correct, or am I just reading?
That's a baseline, and so you can
Okay.
be 30 to 50. 40 is kind of that middle
Sweet spot
point of that.
that we try to hit.
Right. That we try to hit. Anything over that 40%, you can reallocate out to capital project funds from the current year.
If we're under, we're trying to restore it. Okay, got it, thank
So.
you.
Couple other items to note. So the capital transfers out. So this is the projections going out, utilizing that fund balance in the out years. Basically what that excess reserves did was allow us to add some transfers out going into 2029 through 30 and 31. It allowed us to add some additional transfers out on that end of it. So that's where we utilize that fund balance. And then if you look at the 2027 column, this is really where we're projecting where our expenses are going to be. Our revenues we're projecting based off of kind of what we know at this point in time, and expenditures are based off of kind of wages and benefits and other cost assumptions that right now we get it at about 5.5%. Just a lot of it that's unknown because of the union contracts and things like that at this point in time. We have a little bit of levy that's dedicated to the ice arena and to the marsh. It's about $450,000 on that page. And I think I got some more stuff on the next page that I want to point out. Here's where we're projecting the capital project fund levies. And here you can see we're projecting at this point in time, and we're still got a month before our CIP study session, but $9.8 million of levy dedicated to capital projects versus 9.3 this past year. And then you can see it kind of escalates going out into the future pieces of that. Here we have our debt service, $1.4 million, and here's this $810,000 that we talked about of that little savings account, or not little, but that savings account utilizing for future facility improvements. The blue lines here are the public safety master plan related to the police department. So here's that $300,000 for the Axon for DFRs. And then down here is that $140,000 for the extended coverage in the operations center for that. And then the red line is the fire department's request for personnel here. So, gosh, I lose this mouse so easily. I'm sorry. So that $795,000 that I mentioned earlier is there. So looking out into the future, so the public safety master plan we started, this is going to be year 4 in 27. 28 has a request. We need 6 additional firefighters beyond the 6 that are called for in 27. And we would hire those that is projected at like an April 1st deadline or hiring date at that point in time, which means that in 29 we would have a little bit of leftover or carry forward to cover that first 3 months of the year for 2029 as well too. But then we would be wrapped up with the public safety master plan implementation, obviously outside of any building facilities, anything like on that end of it and such. And so you can see at 27, our levy is 6.84%, and within that levy of 6.84% is the police and fire levy impact of 2.08%, which includes this $935,000 here, and then this $300,000 up here for the Axon for the DFRs on that end of it. And then here's our projections moving forward into the out years on that end of it. So, and if you recall, in December, our projections were significantly higher. We had the promise that we would come back and have a better look at those numbers when We got past the first of the year here, and we did take a closer look at these, and it's coming in at a better pace than what we had projected at that point in time. So that's good news on that end of it. Obviously, it's still very early. There's things that can come into play, but we're hoping that we have them captured in some of our assumptions to this point in time on that end of it. Was there any questions on the financial management plan before I go on, or should I just keep plugging away?
Yeah, let's keep
Okay,
going and we can.
perfect.
Yeah.
And here's just a 10-year history. You've seen this chart many times. Just shows our last 10-year history. The blue part on the bottom is our CIP. As we kind of said, that's kind of stayed pretty flat over the years on that end of it. Our operational section is the orange, and at the very top, that gray section is our debt service piece of it. And then here is the projections moving forward, taking it from that financial management plan and moving it over to a graph for a little bit of ease of seeing. Our levy for this current year in 2026 was 7.91%, and then we're projecting that out to 6.84 for 2027 at this point in time, and then your future years are there. And that circled in there is the public safety master plan. Those are the years that are impacted by that plan implementation. So starting back in 2024 and then ending with a little bit in 2029 at this point in time. And I don't know if we want to go over this or not, and probably save some time here. This was just some of the community survey results of the kind of the tax impact piece of that I kind of take a close look at on that end of it. I'm sure you did as well too. I included 25 and 26 in here for the same kind of questions, just so it was a little bit of ease of kind of seeing that, but really the needle didn't move a whole lot from year to year on some of those questions as well too, but can definitely take a peek at those if you want. And I had added this survey question here as well. This talked about the, I believe it was sustainability or conservation and sustainability, those types of things. And then the bottom question there is on 68, would you be willing to see a property tax increase to fund that work there? And there's a strong yes and a yes of about 77% for this year, and it was 68% for last year, so on the same type of stuff. So, and this one,
Yeah, you want me to take this one?
I'll let you take this one, Mike.
Okay.
This one's hot off the press.
I'll grab the mouse here. And so transitioning from what just Darren talked about, this, as I teed up earlier, is just about facility planning. And there's just, as we know, a lot of different moving parts right now. Really just what this outlines is on the left-hand side of this illustration, in the red font are the projects that we've proposed for local option sales tax. So we have the Fire Station 2 noted as a rebuild, Fire Station 3 as a rebuild, the Marsh is noted there, Opus, and then Trails. So that was in our original sales tax proposal and the projects that we've been talking about. Alongside, and then we also note the Community Center and Williston, Fire Station 4, and Fire Station 5. So in our challenges, one of the things that you as a council and along with staff have been talking about is identifying these long-term plans, these long-term projects, trying to manage our assets, what are the potential funding sources, and then the potential timing of those. So along with listing out these potential projects, these are the current estimated costs in that second column. Then what we wanted to do, and at least try to illustrate for you, is just some different scenarios that could happen. This is the last week of session. It's too bad we didn't have this conversation maybe a couple weeks from now. We would know a lot more. This being, again, the last week of session, assuming it doesn't go into what they'd say overtime, is supposed to end actually, well, Monday is the last day of session, but I think Sunday night at midnight is when all bills have to be completed or agreed to. And so just knowing that, these are the different scenarios. So scenario 1 really takes a look at if the city received their state full bonding request. And so as you know, we had submitted as a city $5 million for Fire Station number 2. That's currently being considered as a bonding bill. Again, we're not going to know until next week if there is going to be a bonding bill, if so, if we're going to be in it, and if so, to what extent. This first scenario assumes that we would receive the full $5 million in our bonding bill, and we receive the state legislature granted the city's local option sales tax authority. Now, granted, we would have to go to the voters, but this assumes that we've got the authority. So what are the potential funding sources under that scenario? With the fire station number 2, we would utilize that $5 million in bonding. Now, granted, it's a close to $13 million project, but we would use the $5 million from the state bonding, and then the difference or the delta would be in the local option sales tax. I'll come back to this second line item here. Fire station number 3 rebuild, that would, again, part of the local option sales tax. Same thing with the marsh. That would be a question posed in November. So you'd see between the state bonding request and the local option sales tax, that would be the revenue source for those projects. Opus, right now, we do not have an identified funding source because the legislature did not include that, at least as of right now, in the bonding, in the sales tax proposals. It's only in the Senate, it's in the House, but not in the Senate. So we're still unclear of where the Opus space would shake out at this time. Same thing with the trails. And then in this scenario, the other 2 projects with the community center and Williston, that you as a council would have then the ability to use that $10 million bond issuance that Darren talked about a few slides ago, that we've now built into the tax levy, that you could utilize that $10 million for the community center and for improvements to Williston. And that's really what this salmon colored, pink shaded box illustrates in these next couple examples as well. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is what happens if we get partial state funding with our bond ask, with our state capital bonding ask. We had to fill out a questionnaire here recently. The state asked the city, well, what if you don't get the full amount? What would you accept? So it's kind of a loaded gun question. We had submitted to the state that 2.5 would be something, anything would be great, obviously, but we submitted $2.5 million. So if we didn't get the full 5, we would obviously accept anything, but hopefully we would get up to $2.5 million. So it's really kind of a similar situation. So this scenario number 2 really only impacts Fire Station 2 rebuild. We would use that $2.5 million in state bonding, and then the delta or the difference would be made up in the local option sales tax. The other columns would remain the same. What happens if we get no state bonding? But we got the local option sales tax authority. Fire Station 2 rebuild would be all sales tax. Same thing with Fire Station 3 rebuild would be all sales tax. Same thing with the marsh, all sales tax. Still unclear at this point with Opus and with the trails. And then again, the council would have the flexibility to use that $10 million levy for a general obligation bond. So GO means general obligation bond. And then another scenario is what if a tax bill didn't come to fruition, which is a possibility as well. So if the legislature did nothing on our bonding bill and did nothing with sales tax, what are the council's options? That gets a lot harder because everything at that point would fall on a general obligation debt. And that would be a whole nother conversation. And timing and sequencing of that would look a lot different because that would be all on a property, meaning a property tax, all on property taxes. And in that scenario, so it'd be all basically geo bonding projects and levy increases. So this really, just want to highlight that for you, just given some of these different scenarios, and one of the questions that I teed up at the beginning that we'll tee up at the end is kind of the council's opinions, flavor, if you will, on community center and looking at that $10 million potential general obligation bond issuance to utilize towards the community center. Assuming we can get the local option sales tax authority and assuming we can get some level of bonding, state bonding.
Truly with the fire station.
Oh, yeah.
2.
And then there is, with Fire Station 2, there was an option for a remodel as well. And so we have been talking about a full rebuild with Fire Station 2. In the study, there was an option for a remodel. That was at $2.5 million. Certainly, that's a conversation. I think as we understand what happens at the state legislature, how all that comes into play, and what potential funding options are available if we go down that route. Questions there? I'll pause there real quick.
Not seeing any.
It's just been a tricky one, as we're just waiting to see what's happening. The legislature will really probably chart our course for these projects.
Rebecca,
ahead, Deb.
I have one question, and it's just, I mean, based on sort of our experience so far at the legislature and what we've been hearing from the tax chair, I mean, what's the prognosis? What's the prognostication, I should say, about this year?
Nobody.
I don't think anyone. I don't know that anyone's willing to put. I think that it is truly unknown. From what I'm hearing from our lobbyists, so we have Goff Public's our lobbyists. We as staff have a virtual call with them. Is it every other Friday? So we're getting updates from them. I think everything we've heard from them is that with bonding, you're reading it in the newspapers too, just in terms of bonding bill and the appetite of a bonding bill. I think there's going to be a lot of negotiations that's going to happen this upcoming weekend. We'll determine the bonding bill. I'm probably personally a little more optimistic around local option sales tax in terms that there'll be a sales tax, that there'll be some version of sales tax. I'm more optimistic on that than the bonding. Staff, are you hearing? I think that's.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Momentum seems less optimistic than you.
Is that right? Okay. Moving on.
We want to kick it over to Kelly. Kelly wanted to give just a refresher on the community facilities
study
from a couple of years ago.
Sounds
yes,
good.
yeah, absolutely.
So back in 2023, you probably all remember we did a community facilities study, looked at a number of recreational facilities. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes and look at a couple of the facilities. So whoever's got the click there can click. So first, community center. When we looked at this, the assessment was, there was definitely some things we could improve upon here. Wayfinding throughout the facility. That lobby reception area is kind of tucked back, so it'd be nice to have a more visible reception area. The restrooms are, I would say, in need of some attention for sure. And in general, it's a building that was built in the 80s, and so I think the general finishes are something that we would be looking at improving. Talked about already, Darren and Mike covered this a little bit, but the plan is, the recommendation was to continue with the previously planned renovations. So back in 2020, early 2023, late 2022, we actually bid the project and had some favorable bids. So the recommendation is to continue with that. We talked about the dedicated levy that was approved in 2026. I know there's a lot of what ifs, but there are some dollars there. And as Mike mentioned, the biggest key for us with the community center is scheduling. And we do have a window in early 2027 that we think would work. So I know we're definitely eager to hear what you all think about the community center. Next slide is the Williston Fitness Center. So when we looked at Williston is a building that's 50 years old. We renovated Williston. It's already been 15 years, if you can believe it, back in 2010, 2011. So that building has gotten a lot busier too. When we first renovated, we had 2,000 members. As of this month, we have over 11,000 members at Williston Fitness Center. So Williston is really busy, and you can definitely tell some of the high traffic areas are taking a beating. And so the locker rooms, the front desk area, there's some high traffic areas that we think we could improve upon. When the recommendations came out, it was kind of an a la carte option where we had options from $200,000 to $26 million, which included pickleball courts and things like that. And so when staff kind of narrowed it down, those high traffic areas came in at about a $5 to $6 million renovation. And so, as we talked about, a lot of things up in the air, but potentially looking at the GO bond as a potential funding source, dependent upon a lot of things. And then the last is the Marsh, and I put a few numbers up here just so you were all aware of how the Marsh is doing. The Marsh is doing well, by the way. As you can see, that top right number in the chart is the average member. So the average amount of members, monthly members at the Marsh currently is over 8,700. We're averaging that here in 2026. Now with that said, the two lines below that would be the Silver Sneaker members and the Renew Active members, which the Renew Active is a similar program to Silver Sneakers. So of the 8,700 members, 6,800 are from those two programs. The average monthly visits are 19,000, so we're seeing 600 to 700 people in there every day. That doesn't even include people who are coming to the cafe and who are coming to the market and the spa. So we're seeing good traffic through the building, definitely. Again, probably 800 up to 1,000 people per day, which is really, really fun to see. We have over 100 classes every week for group fitness, a number of different classes too, like sound healing. Women on Weights has been a very popular class. We had the farmers market last year, so we had 13,000 visits at the farmers market. And we really have seen an increase in personal training, which has jumped up over 50%. I would say in that 3-year span, a lot of our numbers have doubled or even tripled, especially members, visits, things like that. It's a little hard to see, but the plan for the funding is that local option sales tax that was mentioned. That was a $35 million ask to the state, and fingers crossed on that. So just wanted to give you a brief overview of the 3 facilities. Again, I think we're looking for, specifically community center. We'd be interested to hear what you have to say about that. So turn it back to you guys.
Very good.
Do we comment on this now, or are we waiting for this?
Let's get through the whole
Okay.
thing. Yeah.
Only a few more slides, I promise. So we'll kind of shift gears here a little bit. Priority-based budgeting. So we talked about a little bit that about the beginning. But yes, we have undertaken kind of this whole rethinking budgeting concept that, or not the Minnesota GFOA, but the National GFOA, National League of Cities, and I think the ICMA as well too, is kind of undertaking this whole different kind of throwing government budgeting upside down a little bit and looking at it more on a programmatic base rather than a line item basis piece of that, and really tying your programs to your strategic plan, tying your programs to what's important and priorities within your community on that end of it and such. So I think I covered most of that. So with priority-based budgeting, by identifying our programs and associated costs with the relevance to the strategic plan and the community served, the city can focus on providing a higher level of service to those highest priorities. And so we talked about that with our strategic plan when we built that a couple years ago or revamped it, is that we were always adding programs. So we're getting wider and weren't necessarily lifting them up. And our focus is to focus a little bit narrower and provide those services that are really a high priority, provide them at a really high level. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with program budgeting in this application through priority-based budgeting through Tyler. Tyler is an application that's allowing us to do that in a very short order. To undertake program budgeting, which has been around for decades on that end of it, to do that by hand, basically, or manually, is probably a 5-year endeavor, and you're not going to get good data out of it. You're not going to get relevant data. This program has reinvigorated that whole process and made it something that we can do in 6 months versus literally 6 years on that end of it. And especially with limited staff, we wouldn't have the staff or the capacity to dedicate staff to doing this full time on this end of it. And this has really been a pretty eye-opening experience to this point in time. And I'm really looking forward to kind of our next steps in it as well. And this really ties to the strategic plan, is that we're aligning those resources with our desired outcomes for that financial strength priority. So what I really want to do is show you around in priority-based budgeting a little bit. And so here is what we have been doing. So we, as a city, we started, 6 months ago on this deal. And so our first step was to identify all of our programs throughout the city. And so every director was given kind of a list of okay, sit down and develop what your programs are throughout your department that you can identify within reason. We don't want to have it where we have 1,500 programs across the city. We want to have it so we happen to have 300 programs across the city that we've identified. It doesn't go down and break down every program into a minutia piece of that, because there are areas where we could break down it even further, but it really gets time consuming and it doesn't really provide you with a whole lot better data on that end of it, because you're just kind of splitting hairs at that point in time. And so the first step was identifying the programs. Then we went back and we entered the budget into this into this program, and so we allocated out the 2025 budget across every one of these programs. And a lot of these programs cross departments, and so if you had a program that was in between police and fire, if it was mental health response or something of that nature or whatever, if you had time, if you had a combined program like that, you would charge your time to each department would charge time to that program. And so it can cross departments, and it really doesn't look at departments at all. It looks at the program. So departments kind of go out the window a little bit, and so it's hard to think about when you think about directors and each department being kind of siloed a little bit. Program budgeting looks at it from the program and how it's supported by personnel across the city on that end of it. And so we went through and we did that cost allocation, and then we went through and did the scoring of it. And so the scoring of the programs is really that priority-based budgeting piece of it. It's not just program budgeting, it's measuring that program across, how does it relate to your strategic plan? Who is or how much of the public is served by that program? Are you serving a big portion of the city, or is it a very small sector of the community being served? Is there an increase in demand for that program, or has it been stable, or is it declining on that end of it? So you measure those types of things. And is it mandated or not? A lot of our programs are mandated by state, federal government on that end of it and such, and so there are a lot of things that we would love to get out of the business of, but we literally can't on that end of it. So those are all those different attributes that you measure it against. You put it in the computer and it jobbles it all up, and it comes out with some of these initial results. And I'm going to say initial because this is just our first delve at the data coming back, and we just got this data back in the last week and a half here. So a lot of directors haven't seen this page at all yet. So this is news to them as well. And one thing I should say is that each director went through and scored it. My assistant finance director, Joel Mary, has been integral in this process as well too. We went back and kind of reviewed each of the programs and the scoring at a very high level. But really what we want to do is get to a point where we have a peer review of a certain number of people looking at every program to make sure that scoring is consistent and accurate from program to program, because everybody can look at it in a little different lens and relate things differently as it relates to the strategic plan, or can the service be done by another party or something to that nature on that end of it and such. And so it's looking at some of these results. So this is one of our landing pages. This is for an internal dashboard on our end. But if you look at safe and healthy community, these are our selected priorities. And so these are the pillars that we see in the strategic plan. These are basically what they call community priorities. These are outward-facing strategic priorities. There are governance priorities as well too, and that's really it's not going to take so long, is it? Okay, that's our financial strength pillar, and so that's the only one that really looks internal. And so that might be something we look at down the road, is like when we redo our strategic plan, we may have to look at more internal operations, because we only measure the financial strength one against a couple outcomes on that end of it and such. But so we really want to kind of focus on the community priorities piece of it for the most part. And I'll just go through this pretty quickly here, but here you can see.
If I can interrupt you,
Yep.
Darren. So if you, across the top of those 6 pillars like Darren mentioned, if you could just quickly highlight the dollars noted. So safe and healthy community.
Or even make it bigger a little bit.
So it takes our budget, as Darren mentioned, and then it spreads those costs against our strategic plan. So it's a way of looking at our numbers differently, because as you know, with the way that government accounting works, it's done by departments. And as Darren noted, this now breaks down those costs and aligns it against our strategic plan. So this is where you really start to understand, as one of our goals, is to make sure we're aligning our costs, aligning our expenditures to the goals that you establish in our strategic plan. That's why that strategic planning is so important. And it's important, and then we demonstrate how those costs then tie back to each of those strategic plans. And so, I don't know if Darren can blow that up.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of looking carefully here. So safe and healthy community, like 74 million. Livable and well-planned development, 72 million. Infrastructure and asset management, can't read it. Sustainability, resilience, and natural environment, it's Someone's gonna have to help me out. I can't read that either, but
32 or 52, one of the two. 52.
sorry.
So, and I want to put a caveat in there too. That so up here in the corner is our total budget. It's $99 million, and then I know Mike mentioned before that our budget was about 15 or 20,000 or million before. This is only programs, and so this doesn't include like our capital project CIP type of dollars. It includes our water and sewer utility fund because that's an enterprise fund, so that's got some capital in it, but it doesn't include like our street improvement fund or those types of things. So this is kind of just operational. And so if you add up, our total budget is 99 million, and you added up all these across, it's obviously much more than that. That really indicates that a lot of our programs cross pillars and that it's providing a bigger impact than really what that $99 million is. It's providing, a $200 and some million benefit basically to those programs on that end of it and such. So,
Thank you.
You're good? Okay. So I want to just take a peek at, maybe we'll drill down into fire. So we're on safe and healthy community. You ranked every program against each of the priorities. And so if it had a relationship to that, you would rank it higher than if it doesn't have a relationship to that department. So fire, the darker the little square in here or rectangle is the higher the correlation to the priority that you're clicked on at the moment. So safe and healthy community, fire's got a dark blue on here. Police, the same thing's got a little lighter shade of blue, but still very dark. The size of the tile is really the size of the budget for the number of programs within that area. And so these are all the different, we don't have it broke down by department, we got it kind of broke down by department division across the city. So these are our 25 or so different areas that we got it broken down into. So if I click on fire, these are the programs within the fire department. So we have probably,
I think there was 16.
where did I see 16? I saw that someplace.
Before you clicked, it was 16.
So they're all very, very dark blue on that end of it. Maybe not a great example. Let's go back and get to a different department here. Let's go to the police department. I know they're not all dark blue. So they got a couple that are lighter shade. And so K9, they're a little bit lighter blue colored compared to some of the other programs on that end of it. And that was really kind of related to how some of the scoring came out on how they did that. And so they got some other areas. Police records management probably doesn't provide a direct relationship to public safety. Obviously, it's something you have to do, but there probably isn't a public safety true benefit to that piece of it. One that I noticed when I did the finance department one, and that's obviously an internal governance program, is that I really related it to our strategic plan. And so if it didn't, the programs I have are accounts payable, accounts receivable, treasury management. If it didn't relate to increasing or keeping our AAA bond rating, or what are our other action steps, increasing our revenues across different areas, those types of things, that didn't have a correlation there. So if you look at the finance area, there isn't strong blues in there other than a couple areas, and the rest of it's white because a lot of it's mandated things that you have to do, but it doesn't really relate to increasing the ability or the strength of your strategic plan on that end of it. So you can drill down into, so if we drill down in police investigations, you can see what makes up all of this. Community inclusiveness is a medium alignment. Infrastructure and asset management, no alignment for livable and well-planned communities, and then very high for safe and healthy community pieces of that. Then you can look down, we can look at all the line items associated with that. So obviously we have personnel costs, non-personnel costs, all those types of things on that end of it. And so everybody's time is allocated out. So even if a director isn't directly overseeing it, they are actually overseeing that program. So there is a little bit of every director's time that's going into every program. And so there is a cost to those programs that over time that kind of build up as well.
And if you could, Darren, so again, this is police, and so with the programs, so these are the obvious ones, right? You've got patrol, investigations, traffic enforcement. So that's where it gets into the real distinguished programs. I think as we've outlined previously, what's different with priority-based budgeting is that you have a police budget. And this really then breaks down the activity within that police budget. And Darren, if you just want to click on like investigations for a second, which is right there. think the other thing that's notable there is you get into the more granular, what's that cost of that, of doing investigations? So we're able to really now understand what is the cost of investigations, the employees that are tied to it, and we're able to do that across all those 300 programs that Darren mentioned. And certainly tonight is, again, that high-level overview. We're going to be spending some time after tonight really diving into all these 300 programs, the specific costs of those programs. I think the other thing Darren mentioned is the peer review, because we want to make sure we're accurate. And so we're doing some peer review on this, the accuracy of it, before we bring this back to you and we dive deeper into it at some future study sessions. So.
Yep, and I just want just a couple other tabs on here as well as information. As we get more and more information and we get it fine-tuned with that kind of peer review piece of it, it gives you some information you can kind of share with that we can help tell our story as well too. Is that kind of gives you some cost comparisons, like here's our total population and our total budget, and what that cost is per resident, and then here's that kind of that escalator that we showed that the priorities that programs cross priorities on that end of it. So here's our multipliers 2.2. So we're escalating that investment, not just within one program, but within multiple programs on that end of it.
Excuse me, is that kind of like an ROI for when you say the multiplier? I'm sorry.
Yeah, not necessarily.
Is it that
They kind of look at it as an amplifier, and so it's
For every dollar spent?
right. So to do this program, you're achieving a safe and healthy community on this piece of it, but you're also cross-pollinating to a
okay.
different priority as well too, and so
Different
it's
program.
providing a benefit to that priority as well.
Got it. Thank you.
So
Thanks.
it's from what I gather, my limited knowledge on that end of it.
All right, thanks.
And then here's another one down here as well too on where your dollar goes. So at every dollar, 23 cents goes to infrastructure and asset management, and 22% for safe and healthy community, and so on and so forth. Community inclusiveness, 13 cents on that end of it. So some information that help us kind of tell our story of how we're allocating our resources towards our programs across the city. Then we have one other one that I know Miranda really likes this one, but this is where you can kind of show what programs are providing your biggest bang for your buck, providing the biggest impact, and then conversely some of the ones that maybe are can be done by other agencies or something of that nature, or it could be need to look at revenue sources on that end of it. That's where priority-based budgeting really triggers that as well too. It's not just about resource allocation, it's about revenue enhancement. And so I think we had looked at one, it was down here, was our paper shredding event or something of that nature. We popped out, where was that? Well, anyway, it was a paper shredding event. And so the cost of that was like $16,000 that we provide. And so that's, our cost. Is there an opportunity to partner with somebody? Is there other businesses throughout the community that do paper shredding events? Is there banks that do that from occasion or whatnot on that end? Or is there an opportunity there to charge somebody a couple dollars for a banker's box of paper files or something to that nature? So it's not saying that if they're in the lower left of this that we're going to cut them and be done with them. It just gives you a better opportunity to start looking at those problems or programs in a different lens and really start to analyze, what is the importance of it? What part of the community are we impacting? Is it a program that still brings lots of relevance to lots of people, or is it something that can be potentially reallocated to someplace else or something to that nature as well? So lots of data here, lots of data to still go through and see where we're at on everything, but it's some pretty cool stuff. And so there's another screen as well too that we haven't got into yet that takes AI and utilizes and provides some areas which gives you some opportunities to what other communities have done to either reallocate resources or to increase revenues and those types of things. And it's pretty crazy the resources that are out there that I just took a quick peek at some of the stuff, and just cities around the area, cities around the state, cities around the region, or even country that have exact or similar programs to what we have and what they've done to enhance revenues or to look at resource reallocation, those types of things on that end of it and such. So this is a quick overview of it. Happy to answer any questions on that, but I think this is,
So I'm going to interject with just a suggestion on this. I think for me, too dense to try to absorb in this setting. I think maybe this is a good opportunity for a 3 grouping council member meeting to kind of get a better feel for it, particularly once maybe the peer review piece happens, because it looks cool. It's a little bit.
no, it
Yeah.
absolutely.
It can feel
no.
overwhelming. It's
Yes.
a lot of overwhelming data.
I think in this setting, yeah.
And you can't, it's microscopic.
Yeah.
You can't really read it from the seat.
No, yep. Completely understandable. And we just wanted to get it out there. We've been talking about it for a while and just wanted to show you a little bit of the results the preliminary results that are out there a little bit on it and kind of go from there. So, but definitely we'll be utilizing this to help us with this upcoming 2027 budget and to help better align our programs with our priorities, so.
Excellent.
All right. I think that. So Mike, I think we're back up to you on that.
We're back to the questions.
All right.
We
The
gave you a
questions are
lot.
the council.
Yep.
We also had the council at the beginning. Council inquiry or questions and answers, and then, or was it our little overview?
Okay, so I have a request for a break, and I think we went a little longer than anticipated on this. So sorry to tell you, we're gonna shoot for the 3rd period now to make sure council has the opportunity to answer these questions. So let's take a 2-minute, 3-minute break, and we'll come back and try to hit these questions, but I want everybody to have an opportunity.
It's very cool.
So did you have to manually enter, or
The budget?
does it, I mean, to the PBB?
We had to, because our system is a little bit archaic, so.
Okay, all right, let's
There's a little
go
bit of a
back
process to
to,
that,
let's get back to it here. So we're gonna go, I think
typing
our,
something?
first
Okay.
opportunity is to ask questions. So just general questions, we've got kind of the 3 big issues, the overall budget, the financial management plan. We've got the questions about facilities specifically, or the facilities discussion, and then if there are specific priority-based budgeting questions, although I think that might be a more productive conversation for once we've gotten maybe a little bit deeper into it. So who wants to start with their questions? Anybody? Paula, you had a question about facilities, I think?
Just the marsh. I just wanted to check what I make sure I heard correctly. So Kelly, we have 8,700 approximately members, but almost 7,000 of those are the Silver Sneakers type programs.
That is correct.
But personal training is up 50% from previous year.
Previous year, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so the Silver Sneakers, I assume at some point there's gonna be kind of a cost analysis of, membership versus people swiping for Silver Sneakers and all of that.
That is correct. Yeah, the contract doesn't allow us to talk about the dollars and cents publicly, but it is a per scan membership type of situation, and yes, we will have to evaluate
Okay.
the benefits of that for sure.
Okay, yeah, I know our former mayor was very interested in
Yeah.
those numbers
And you heard it in the news, the other fitness
Yeah.
centers have talked about this, and it's a challenging discussion for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, just wanted to check my numbers. That was a pretty high number for percentage of folks. Okay, thanks.
I have a follow-up question on that, which is there a way to identify additional revenue generated from Silver Sneakers members specifically? So could we understand, how many Silver Sneakers are paying for
Personal
women on
training.
weights or, personal training which would give us a better picture on, is it and I'm making up a number, the $5 per scan, my made up number, or is it really, but that person's also adding all of these other things?
Yes, there is. We do not have that number currently, but that is something we could get. We would not be able to tell what they're spending with the contracted services, like the market or the cafe, things like that. But within our programming, TRX programming, personal training, Pilates, those are extra charges to membership that we could look at and see if those Silver Sneaker members are purchasing those or not.
That might help with that analysis.
That's a good idea.
All right, other questions? Okay, so then I think the next thing is council priorities. So the idea is, and this was stressed in the packet, we want to know, are there things looking at as staff puts together this budget that we want to make sure it includes, or we'd like to throw in the ring that it includes. And so I think Miranda's going to take some notes. Mike and I talked about probably the most productive approach to this is to go down the line and people can identify what their priorities are or what they would like to consider for the budget. So I'll start, if it's okay, Mike, do you have anything to add?
Nope.
I'll start, Paula, with you, and then Miranda's gonna take the notes, and then we'll just go to Kizzy and on.
Okay, yeah. All right, some things that I had identified just quickly was funding for Cullen. So
For
seeing
what?
if we
Cullen Nature Preserve.
Cullen Nature Preserve, seeing if we can get that. Oops, sorry. Need to get this on. So just maybe, are we just listing them, kind of ticking them off,
Yeah,
and not
let's-
talking about details at this
If
point?
you've
of how-
got, if you've got a little overview you wanna include, by all means.
Just looking at how we can get to, I think we're looking at maybe, well, I know the park board recently said they wanted to recommend funding for this. I think we're looking at $900,000 to $950,000 to fully fund it, if that's correct. So just how do we get to that so we can actually get it open to the public instead of, kind of hopefully not dribbling and drabbing it? I think that would be great. And that may mean some, kind of prioritization of some of our other programs if we need to get to that. I don't know what we can use, whether, community investment fund, park dedication, whatever, looking at, do we need to do the ice rink still at, the commons? We might have to look at our priorities for that. In my view, I would love to see this funded. Other things, looking at not having seen, kind of the full CIP for this and some of the budget yet, so I don't know if this is already in there. Looking at, probably some potential set-asides for possible fencing for an off-leash dog area, depending on, kind of our June study session. I did see somewhere, I think it was in the park board packet, mentioned that, there was 9 acres of fencing for Gillum in the CIP at $65,000. So, maybe, we can relook at what those numbers were as presented last time. And then I guess sauna in the park. So would love to have more information on that and how we can figure out how to kind of continue to expand that program. In terms of things to look at, playgrounds, reconsidering the number and replacement schedule for playgrounds, maybe doing a usage study, if that makes sense. Yeah, those are the main things. A multicultural fair. Love to see, us do something in that regard. So we maybe kind of bring together the entire community and, kind of bringing together all the cultures that are represented in Minnetonka. I've talked about this, I think, previously last year, and I know bandwidth and budget might have been difficult, but hopefully there's a way to kind of fit that in there with our expanded staff. There might be a little bit more bandwidth for that. And then in terms of climate and sustainability, is finding maybe some budget, some way to do city electrification or other, rebates for switching to clean energy devices like, electric lawnmowers or, just other ways to rebate similar to what some other surrounding cities are doing, such as Hopkins and some others. So those are, I think, my main ones right now.
Great.
Oh, and urban fenced dog parks, which wouldn't be a big driver if we use them for, use skating rinks. Because I know a few people have been asking, well, what about my small dog? I don't want him in an unfenced area. I want it in, where they can't be a flight risk. And, how do we provide for those people, especially now that we have, kind of less space for that now.
So I talked about.
Well, hold on, Kizzy. Go ahead, Mike.
If I could, that's just really helpful, and just to summarize those real quick. So Miranda, if you want to put sauna in the park, that'd be a CIP item. Playground, you should set a CIP, rebates.
And the fencing would be potential, it's just kind of putting a place marker in there if it's needed.
Rebates for clean energy, Julie, would that be a?
We just got the grant for that, actually.
Yeah.
So.
Would that be operational? Would it be an operational?
Operational, yeah, it's already.
And the reason that we're noting it that way is I think as Rebecca teed it up tonight, these are really good examples just to, where staff can then come back. So I think in all of these, to start with Colin as a good example. And it's a CIP item. The CIP is coming to you in June, I believe, so that June. And so with everything that's noted here, we'll look to bring these back to you with either it's maybe already in there. I think, Colin, we're already trying to figure that out. And then if there's something that staff can comment on, well, it's not in the budget, and here's what the resources would take, and then the council will need to provide further direction on where to take all of these throughout this whole process. But it's really, again, really helpful to understand, as I said earlier, understand what you're thinking about so we can look at ways to incorporate that.
All right, Kizzy, take it away.
Okay, so I'm always thinking about WALT program, budget around WALT, how we can better utilize some of the funding that we're, given to WALT. Thinking about the Pathway program. I talked to Mike about this earlier today. With the cost of our housing, purchasing homes in Minnetonka is really expensive, especially for people of color, even though we are giving the $75,000 when, lower or people of color income does not meet that, where you have to qualify for $578,000 for medium house in our city. Is there any other way that we can get a little bit more deeper? And I don't want to do the property taxes on residents, but maybe looking at something else that we can help make sure that people are diversifying people who come into our community. So thinking about that. And then something Paula just stated about the multicultural fair. I remember I spoke for the last few years about open streets. They do open streets in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Not St. Paul, but in Minneapolis, South and North. I participated in one of those programs where you're bringing multicultural folks to our city and making it more easier for people to, like small business owners, to be able to participate in our community events. I think that's something that I would want to see happen in our city. So kind of aligning with the multicultural fair. And then programs for teen. I mean, I had kind of left it alone, but then when Peterson said, the 22%, I'm like, okay, do we really have enough programs for teens? So that kind of just brought that back to me. So.
All right. Thanks, Kizzy. All right, Kimberly.
So I have more higher, so like I don't have specific programs. So like my priorities are implementing our climate action and adaptation plan. So in particular, climate mitigation, climate, what's the word I'm looking for? Resilience. And then kind of in line with what Paula was talking about, but also like offering programs to our residents, so help with implementing solar or other, you know, potentially winterizing your home. And so those sort of helping our residents be more more resilient, more climate friendly, etc. Housing. So again, our affordable housing. So both in our home buyer, home ownership, as well as rental assistance, or hope, you know, or what's the word? Stimulating affordable housing through TIF or all of our programs that we've got going. And then finally, I just an overview of equity, making sure that we are reaching as many people and being as equitable as possible in all of our programs that we put forth.
Great. All right, Deb.
So, since I was only able to listen to the survey, I'm going to be an outlier and say that based on how people use it, the age of our population, I actually would like to keep the monthly Minnetonka memo, in part because of the transparency issues I think we will be running into, or the perceived issues that we'd be running into because of the ADA transition plan. You know, we got an extra year to get up to speed with it, but there are still real challenges with getting information to the public because of it, and so I just think that this might be not the correct year to do that, so I'd want to keep the investment in that. I agree about the finding ways to make the community and our residents more climate resilient and responsible. And of course housing, of course equity. I love the idea of a multicultural fair. I mean, open streets is great. The only thing is we don't have a main street, so that might make it just really challenging. And in terms of sort of budgeting priorities, it's always public safety. So whatever we need to do to get the fire stations where they need to be, that's important to me. And the other thing is looking at, we always have safe routes to schools in mind, and there will be the trail going in on Baker Road, and there, you know, just if there is a way to collaborate with the partners on that project to get a few extra sections of sidewalk around the middle school, I think it would make a lot of sense, because Orchard Road is very narrow. There's not really any place to walk between Baker Road and the driveway going out of the parking lot onto Orchard Road, and people are parking on the sidewalk sometimes, but there are just a couple little sections that they're very short, so it just seems like it would make a lot of sense to sort of complete that sidewalk section. Other than that, more trees, spending money on tree replacement, our tree program, and our water quality efforts are really important to me too. But there's nothing specific other than that.
I forgot to add that I was continuing to see the public safety master plan, make sure we continue with that was also a priority.
All right, thanks, Deb. Well, I will say, you know, I've been pretty ardent about being careful about maxing out our capacity, both financially and staff-wise. So I want to be conscientious about a wish list, although most everything on there certainly worthy. For me, I just have a couple things that have bubbled up to the top for me. One, I think we've put a lot of public-facing effort into Cullen and money and commitment. So it's important to me to get us to a point at least where we can start having the public invited in. So that is a priority. I'd like to really focus on some of the things that we've undertaken so far and making sure that we're maximizing those things. So when we go to, and I think this is going to show up in the budget, but making sure that we can use the drones more expansively. So funding that additional staff member for the operations center is important to me. Also making sure whatever we know we've started and we've got to finish at least, or get to it in an interim point on the dogs. And so whatever that is, that's probably going to take some capital in getting that piece right, because I don't think we've been able to thread the needle quite yet on that. So those are kind of the top things for me. I think there's a lot in here. I can appreciate that. I think we're already doing. It sounds like we've got some grant funding coming for something. So I think this is a great list. Some of it seems a little like a wish list, but you know, we gotta.
This is where we throw it out.
Yeah, we gotta start somewhere. So, is this? Oh, I will just say one thing. I'm very, very sensitive, given the investment in parks on the north side of town. And I don't want to be too prescriptive to staff on where money comes from, but I'm very sensitive to not using park dedication fees for Cullen because we have devoted so much money in park dedication fees on the north side of town, and so much of our developments on the south side of town. Want to be conscientious of that. Mike, is that what we're looking for here?
Yeah, it is. Thank you. This is very helpful. Hopefully you'll find this helpful. So what we'll do as staff, appreciate this as we now begin to take your comments tonight as I work with Darren and our team on where we can bring this conversation back to you, because you're going to have to make some decisions. Because I think, as you noted, Mayor, it's going to be probably challenging to get all of these in the budget, but that's decisions you're going to have to make in terms of your priorities. And I think some on here, just some of the things you've mentioned, are already in the works. So I think there's some that we can say, yep, these are happening, and there's conversations that we're having with staff already. Colin's a good example. I think I already mentioned that already. The dog fencing, that's something currently we gotta, as we bring the CIP back, where is that fencing fitting? Because that's a conversation we're going to have in June at the study session regarding purgatory and follow up on the purgatory park, and perhaps fencing's involved there. And so there's the ones that are general fund, certainly that'll come back in terms of when it's operations. It's just then a matter of what are the resources, more importantly staff resources. So what current programming do we have? Can we add more programming? What does that look like? Do we cut something to make something else happen? So I think that's part of this program-based budgeting as well, taking a look at how we utilize our staff time. Where is it being allocated today? Can it fit into some of the things mentioned here? And so again, this is the first step in that whole process. So this is helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody. I'm good. It's clear that people gave this some thought before coming in today, so that's very helpful. Very appreciative.
And Rebecca, just quickly, and tonight's not the only night. As I said earlier, it's helpful to have this conversation tonight, but as we progress the next few months, something else might pop up, and that's okay. And so when you have something that does come up, make sure we're stating it in these budget meetings, so that way it gets considered, it gets vetted, and that way we don't have lost opportunities along the way.
Great. Thanks, Mike. All right. So it looks like we've hit number 1. So we're on to number 2. We're clipping right along. So this is specific to the facility improvements. And that includes kind of Mike's sophisticated chart that he developed today. So fire stations, I think, are part of that conversation, right? So regarding facility improvements, are there specific projects the city should consider as the highest priority? So I guess that's the first question, and the sub-questions are, if yes, are there, this is, I think, a tricky question, preferred financing methods, timeframes, or other prioritizations that we should consider? And then there's the really hyper-specific into the community center, and that's really driven by that scheduling piece. So, anybody want to start? Oh, go ahead, Kimberly.
I would say the fire stations are the priority, and in the order that they've been presented. So, Fire Station 2, and then is it Fire Station 3? 3. I really kind of believe that Fire Station 2 needs to be a new facility as opposed to a remodel, which of course is more expensive. Preferred financing methods, I would love if we could get local option sales tax for the fire stations and the marsh as well. And then bonding, if we get any bonding money, that would also be great. Those are beyond our control at this point. I don't know about time frames. I mean, I said, yeah, the Fire Station 2 first, Fire Station 3, Marsh, if we can get if local option sales tax is approved for the Marsh, that whatever staff feels is the best timeline for that.
Any thoughts on the community center?
Yeah, so it would be really nice to know that these other things, like if we're getting bonding money and local option sales tax for these other projects, then I'd be more willing to jump in and say, yes, let's do the community center. I mean, I think it does need, obviously we were ready ready to do it, and then the Mars purchase came up. So I get what's the funding source for the identified funding source for that?
The bond issuance.
So we have the $10 million. So we, in our financial management planning, really looking to get long-term, part of that long-term view of these facility improvements was to utilize general obligation bonding as one mechanism, just given these priorities. Okay. And so it's really maybe another way of rephrasing the question, or to think about it is, how best do you want to use that $10 million bond issuance? It's at your fingertips. It's been set up to be used. Again, it's going to be dependent on the sales tax and the bonding. And kind of maybe the way to think about it is, if the city receives local option sales tax authority, and if the city has some level of bonding, is there an appetite to look at utilizing that $10 million, being flexible to $10 million towards the community center?
Okay, and to be sure I understand what a general obligation bond is this
the city would borrow.
We're lending money to ourselves? Or
No.
No. We're borrowing money from. Got it. Okay. So yeah, I would say definitely if we get funds, bonding and or sales tax money for our other project, for these other highlighted projects, then I would say yes. Let's look at using bond money to do the community center.
Great. All right, who wants to take a crack at it next, Deb?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Kimberly's assessment that fire stations are number one, Fire Station 2 for sure. I mean, preferably, you know, my aim is to not raise the levy to the extent that we can avoid that. And so, of course, you know, I'm hoping and praying for a miracle at the state legislature for some bonding dollars and approval to put sales tax in front of our voters to see if we can leverage some money for these many projects. And there's just so many, I feel like we're kind of feeling our way through a tunnel in the dark, trying to prognosticate and figure out, I mean, of course, we have put off the community center for a very long time, and if you go to other communities that have newer community centers, I mean, we don't have to keep up with the Joneses necessarily, but there is something to be said about there would be a return on investment in my mind if we refresh the community center, because it would be more attractive to people that would rent our spaces, and so I'm attracted to that. And so I would be inclined to, if everything falls in place, to expend some general obligation bond dollars for this building. It needs it. And so, I mean, I think that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Great. All right, thanks, Deb. All right, who wants to go next?
I can go. I overall support what Councilmember Wilburn and Calvert has stated. One thing different for me with Fire Station 2, you know, Wilburn said brand new, a new facility. If we're able to have that facility where, because I know it was about having more firefighters and being able to have space. I'm not sure if we had enough space for new firefighters. So if we were able to remodel where we can add like maybe some, you know, structure onto the building or something that creates space, then that's one thing. But if it's not doable and it makes more sense to do new structure, then I guess new structure, but I don't know if that's necessary.
My main concern was the equipment handling, like the way the setup now is
Decontamination.
the decontamination setup, and I think it's difficult with the remodel in the way where the living areas would be to have that be safe.
Yeah, well, I don't know, that's what I'm saying, if, you know, we're not architects, so if the architect can come up with ideas, then maybe. I'm just saying whatever's more cost efficient, but, yeah.
Great. So. Thank you, Kizzy. Paula.
I'm going to start with the B, and so is there to consider improvements to communities that are, again, dependent on state bonding and sales tax, sales tax, because, you know, considering this is probably fungible money, we only have so big a pot. And then just for the people who might be listening, just in case there's questions, state bonding is basically a grant that we get from the state. Bonding, when we do it from the city, is when we borrow money. So just in case there's any confusion about that. So in terms of the priorities, in terms of specific projects, Mike, we talked about this today. I still have some questions about, you know, 24/7 staffing of, you know, the fire stations and the needs there. So I think we're going to go through that on Thursday. So I can't really answer that right now. Obviously, I'm hoping for the Marsh, and then I would be Williston next. I think they both are probably equally important. And I would probably put those ahead of the community center just because they serve more residents. Although we do rent out space here, but we rent out space a lot in the Marsh as well, which is generating some revenue and has the potential to generate more.
Can I say one more thing?
Let's make sure. Are you?
Yep,
okay.
that's it.
Yep, go ahead, Kizzy.
Oh, I wanted to say something about the community center too. I do support the community center for 2027 because we keep putting the community center off, and I really feel like the community center does need more work than the Marsh, just visually looking at the Marsh versus the community center. So that's just my thought on that. So.
All right, thank you. So, you know, I guess my perspective is, pessimistic on state bonding and, more hopeful on the sales tax. And so making those comments based on the sales tax, and that would obviously, if we can get approval and then it passes, that does address those high priority facilities. And with that assumption, I'm very comfortable spending on the community center, especially spending more time here during the week and understanding how much use this building gets on a daily basis, and the restrooms are not adequate and not accessible. I think we would see bookings and revenue really increase with that change alone, because if I were considering an event, that would make me second guess having an event here. And we have significant use by seniors. We have an aging population, all of the things that we've talked about. And this is space that, with an investment, it's flex space as well. We can use it a lot of different ways, and I think it's just necessary. We also do a ton in our main community room for appreciation for boards and commissions, and it starts to feel a little tired and like, here we are in our 1980s room. And so I think for a whole wide array of reasons, I think that's really important. I think we have to hope today that, and I think we'll know more even by the time we're here in June, but based on what happens at the legislature, I think if we don't get anything, if there's no tax bill, and we aren't able to pursue the sales tax, we probably have to regroup a little bit, but assuming that that's on the table, then I'd say we block it out for now. I mean, that's my opinion. We're going to have really, really difficult conversations later in the year if we are in that position about all of the facilities. Obviously, fire is number one priority. I think I'll close with this. It's easy to think that what is 1 or 2 minutes of response time difference, if it's going to save us a bunch of money, unless you're the person that needs the response time and your life depends on it. I mean, I'm less worried about your property, but we're talking about people's lives where 1 or 2 minutes is life and death. So I don't want to be too cavalier about how we consider some of the fire station, and we know that we've seen how once the fire stations are staffed 24 hours, the significant reduction in response time that we're seeing out of that. So to me, that's a major priority. All right, Mike, did you get what you need from us?
I believe so. Yeah, this is very helpful.
Okay.
Darren, do you have any?
Nope, yep. All good.
All right. So then our last item, and we've alluded to this several times, so probably don't have to spend much time on it, is the June study session. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So for June, we will come back with the CIP and then the Purgatory Park off-leash dog review. So some of the items you've mentioned tonight earlier on that, as Miranda's taking notes, we'll bring those back and we'll have conversations on the CIP. Staff has been working on that here Darren and others the last month, and then certainly getting that filtered down here in the last week or so has been some good exercises here amongst staff. So we'll be ready for the CIP. And then Purgatory, I think I touched base with most of you on where we're at with Purgatory, so we'll be ready for some recommendations and conversation in June. And then in July, and whoever said that earlier, we did split up the CIP and EIP this year, so July will be the EIP. And I think as Ms. Wishnak usually says, it's all things housing, so we'll have housing conversation, develop a refinancing policy, zoning code rewrite conversation, and some subcategories in all of that as well. And I think we've talked about data centers also being kind of the subcategory in that conversation as well. Certainly as we talked to about the zoning code rewrite. So that's the next couple months. Then August will be the really big night on the general fund, and coming back also with priority-based budgeting. We'll be a lot more further down the path on that and be refined. And then to your point, Rebecca, we'll look at staff to schedule some group meetings as we get you more inundated with what that looks like.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you, everybody, and we will adjourn, and we'll see you next week.